What's up, everybody? It's RB and Dom back here with a top of the list WandaVision review. Of course, episode 6 airing yesterday evening at midnight. The title of the episode, an all new Halloween spooktacular. And we're about 2/3 of the way through the show now, finding out more and more about what's going on in Westview with Wanda and Vision and all the surrounding characters. And, you know, on a good trend as well. So I think we should start off by giving our scores here, Dom, our thoughts on the episode before we dive into spoilers. So why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so we'll start it off spoiler-free. My thoughts on this episode after last week's episode was pretty great, I thought. Very exciting. I thought this one was about on par, if not just a little bit worse for me. So I'm going to go ahead and give like my spoiler-free thoughts and then like my score at the end. So biggest standout for me was Vision in this episode. Everything to do with his character and story and his like story arc in this episode, I loved. Wanda's brother showing up and seeing the resolution to that was great. Those are kind of like the two biggest bright spots for me. For me, my biggest negative is what's going on with Sword. Not that it's not entertaining, it's just a little bit less interesting than watching what's happening in the sitcom, which was 90s this week. We got to celebrate the 90s and we got some certain references to sitcoms. I'll say that in the spoilers. But I enjoyed the 90s sitcom aspects of this episode as well. I think you and me are going to be kind of reverse on this, but my score is 8.5 out of 10.
All right. So I'm just going to give this one a little bit of a notch lower than that. I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10. It was a good episode, but definitely I wouldn't put it in the great range. I think my biggest problem with it was I was not a fan of the sitcom aspect this week. I felt like it was very much just wedged in there to keep the continuity. And I understand the show's WandaVision. We got to do that. But they did just such a brilliant job in episodes 1, 2. And then I think it was episode 6 when we had the 80s sitcom. Or episode 5, beg your pardon, because we're in episode 6 now. We did the 80s sitcom that I just enjoyed a lot better. It felt really forced here. Maybe it's just because the style of 90s sitcom they went for wasn't really what I was looking for. But you know, it was good. A lot of things happened in this episode. I felt like a lot of things were really slow in the first 2/3 of this episode. Then the final third was just amazing, which was the redeeming factor why I'm not giving this like a 6 or a 6.5. But overall, 7.5 out of 10 for me. Still worth a watch, but definitely not one of these top tier episodes like I found the last 2 episodes to be.
Okay. Cool. So I think we both have our scores out here. 8.5 for me, 7.5 for RB. Looking well dressed today, by the way.
Thank you.
If you're watching on YouTube, guys, RB is dressed well. We had to film this one on his lunch break.
Yeah.
So getting this one out to you on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, Friday.
I'm one day ahead.
Lunch hour, yeah.
Yeah, Friday afternoon. Yeah. Okay. So I think we should just put our spoiler.
Yeah.
Here.
Spoiler alert.
Make the sound right.
Wee. Spoiler alert. First spoiler alert on top of the list from RB. But so if you haven't watched WandaVision episode 6, an all new Halloween spooktacular, go ahead and hit pause, watch it, come back, hear what our thoughts are. Maybe, share your thoughts in the comments if you agree with us, or maybe if you disagree as well. We'd love to hear from you, the fans. But let's dive right into spoilers. And I think we'll start off right at the beginning of this episode with just the setting of Westview here in this 90s sitcom.
Yeah, so the sitcom they're going to be paying homage to this week was Malcolm in the Middle.
Yes.
Which I didn't expect at all. That's kind of like we were talking maybe Friends or...
or Seinfeld maybe, a cut sequence where, we have Wanda or Vision talking about what's going on. But instead, we got Malcolm in the Middle, which meant our episode narrators were... Tommy and Billy.
Yeah.
I was going to say Timmy and Tommy, but no. Tommy and Billy, it's very similar, to a lot of breaking the fourth wall, addressing the audience directly. Not something I was necessarily expecting. And once again, I'm not the biggest fan, as I said last week, of Tommy and Billy, which I think hurt this episode for me.
I think this is our biggest point of contention here, right? That you didn't feel like this aspect of the show was as strong as the other weeks. Mm-hmm. For me, this was equally as strong, if not better, than last week's representation of the 80s. I thought that this one had a much better rhythm to it, within the sitcom portion than the Full House reference last week.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I liked it. And stylistically, they got a bunch of new camera angles and directions and stuff to go on in there. And this was definitely a return to the mystery aspect of those first 2 episodes, where we didn't really know what was going on outside of the thing, and Vision is trying to, figure out, what's going on inside of Westview. So I like the mystery aspect. But like we said, we kind of disagree on the 90s. I really enjoyed it. Ryan, not so much.
Not a big fan.
Let us know what you thought down in the comments below. But I think we really need to talk about, I want to talk about my favorite.
Of course, yeah. Let's dive right into Vision.
Yeah, my favorite part of the episode, Vision. He had an amazing character arc. It was emotional. It was funny at times, and it was really interesting to watch. He was very active. We had a lot of progress made in this episode. I know you said it was slow. I don't think so at all. At least you said the first third of the episode or something. I thought it was great.
Obviously this episode with its title being circled around the holiday of Halloween, and I felt like every scene that actually had to do with Halloween was just super unnecessary. I felt like the whole episode was, very quirky, quippy. Now, if we recall though, Vision leaves very early on in this episode, and doesn't really have to do with that Halloween timeline that's Wanda, Pietro, and the boys. And I thought, every time Vision was on screen, I couldn't take my eyes away, as he slowly uncovers what we already know, that he's in this Westview anomaly that's being controlled by Wanda. So, I think his realizations are great. I think there's still a lot of questions around Vision. We have the big reveal moment. We know his memories are altered, but we have the big reveal where he's talking with Agnes, and he, uses his powers to sort of unscramble her mind. She goes, "You're an Avenger." And he goes, "What's an Avenger?" And I think that's a big moment of realization that Vision has no idea about his life pre-Westview. I knew it was altered, but I did not realize that it was completely gone.
Yeah, and that aspect will come up again with, who remembers what happened before, and, who's under Wanda's control, who's not, which was a big aspect of this episode, which I love that they're focusing it on. I think that one of my favorite moments for Vision here is when he has this. Well, first, I want to have a precedent to this.
Okay.
So another thing that I liked about this episode within the sitcom, I know you said the Halloween stuff wasn't as great. I thought it was good. But my favorite aspect was at the beginning of this episode when we first get to see the interaction between the boys and their uncle. And then Vision comes down, and Wanda and Vision are talking to each other. And we get kind of see this back and forth of this subtext in their conversation. They're talking about going out for Halloween, but Vision is really saying, "You can't control what I do. I'm going out to patrol for Halloween."
Right.
And she says, "But that's not what you were supposed to." And then she says, "When did you decide this?"
Right. Yeah. And there was even that moment too when he talks about his costume, and she goes,
"It was the only thing in my closet."
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I took that from you.
No, without a doubt. But then he sees that Wanda's almost catching on, and he reverts back. He goes, "I know you love the luchador fighters." Yeah. But absolutely a great story arc for Paul Bettany as Vision. Of course, go
the
ahead.
biggest moment I really need to know your thoughts on. For me, this was the culmination of Vision's character as a whole. When he breaks through the edge of Westview and is coming through, and it's not the fact that he's doing that, which is pretty emotional in itself, but it's what he says. Do you remember what he says?
I don't remember exactly now.
So at first he's saying, "Help me," but then to me, this is what really speaks to Vision's characters. He says, "Help these people," and he's looking at the director and Darcy and all of these, and help these people, which is one of my favorite Vision moments because it really shows you back all the way to Age of Ultron. He believes in humanity and he cares for humanity.
Right, which was the opposite, the juxtaposition between him and Ultron, despite both being sort of these supercomputers in sort of a living form, so to speak. Yeah.
So that was a big moment for me. I thought that was a great character moment.
Yeah, but it's very on par with Vision, and that's I think why he's trying to break through this Westview anomaly, because he sees that people are in pain. I don't know necessarily if he didn't have in the last episode, the moment where he's talking to his coworker and he's saying, "She's in my head and there's so much pain." I don't think he'd necessarily be trying to break through. He'd just be enjoying his life with Wanda.
Yeah, and it kind of shows you the juxtaposition between this husband and wife, right? You know, we have Vision, purely good, cares about others, doesn't want anyone to be hurt, and he's a hero.
Right.
He's the epitome of the best that we have to offer as a hero, and yet we've been seeing Wanda act more as a villain this season than a hero.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to talk about Wanda, but I think we should save that for how we're going to wrap up the episode. I think we put a bow on Vision, and your thoughts on him. I mean, brilliant story.
Oh, and I think he's alive at the end of the episode. You think he's alive too, right? He's laying on the ground and kind of gets reanimated.
Define alive. I mean, I think that he's alive within the anomaly.
Right.
But as we clearly saw with him breaking through the wall, he can't leave. He is being, quite literally ripped apart as he breaks through.
Reminiscent of the snap after the snap happened.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but you're right. The other big addition this week, and I think probably your favorite part of the episode was Evan Peters as Pietro.
Evan Peters, I wasn't, like I said, I think the 90s sitcom aspect, very quirky. I was not a fan of it. And the first 2/3 of the episode could care less about him, but there are little hints here and there. I think it starts right when they start trick-or-treating that, start to reveal that he knows a little bit more than the rest of the Westview folks. First he starts off by, he's talking about his past with Wanda, and Wanda's asking him all these questions. He goes, you're testing me. That's all right. I know. So there's a little bit, he clearly understands that he's not the same Pietro Maximoff. Mm-hmm. And then I think we have the huge bombshell reveal when we get the point where they're sitting together in the town square, Wanda and Pietro, and he goes, so how, I think you did this really well with all the kids, obviously Halloween episode, they're just cameo actors, but I think you handled this ethically perfectly. So we know that he truly is more in on this than, the rest of the characters around in Westview.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you're talking about I just don't get why you don't like the first part of this episode, because every scene that Pietro's in, I think is amazing. I thought this was going to be the best episode of the show thus far when I first saw it. Let me finish. Go ahead.
I want to respond to why I didn't like the first 2/3, but go ahead.
Okay, so here's my biggest negative. This is the reason why I give this just a little bit less than last week's episode is everything that's going on with Pietro and Wanda and Vision in the sitcom. Everything in the sitcom is so amazing that every time they cut back to Sword, yes, it's entertaining, but I want to get back to the sitcom and see what's going on. That's how I feel. What do you think?
We very much disagree on that. Okay. I'm to the point where episodes 1 and 2 were great because they were pretty much purely sitcom.
Yeah.
And I loved episode 5 because I think they did an awesome job balancing Sword and what was going on in Westview. I feel like here in episode 6, it was so zany and wacky during the sitcom that you're right. When it cut to Sword, it was like, I don't care, but I really didn't care what was going on in the sitcom. I just wanted to know what was going on. And, it's just frustrating.
That reasoning there.
It's frustrating, man. It's frustrating. I'll tell you.
That reasoning, right? I can't believe you see it like that. It's so weird.
It's just, I felt like if we're going to go with, Pietro, who's this quirky character who's funny, bring him in earlier, not at this point to detract away from the story. Which is what I felt like he did. He's hilarious. You're absolutely right. So are Tommy.
He says it in the show. This is the homage to the 90s. He's the perfect wacky uncle that shows up.
Once again, that's one of his breaking of character that I really enjoy.
For it, it's fantastic. I think every scene he's in is fantastic. But my big question for you is whether or not you think that he's under the control of Wanda or he is, free within to make his own decisions. What do you think?
It's really tough to say because we have that great line between him and Wanda where he said, 1 second I'm being shot in the street like a chump, which of course, we saw Pietro Maximoff die in Age of Ultron. And then he goes, and the next second I just hear you calling to me. Mm-hmm. So maybe he does have free will. Maybe if you choose to be a part of Westview, which he did, maybe you do have the free will. We thought maybe there was some free will going on with Agnes from last episode where she, has her scene, should I take that again from the top? But I think that was taken away in this week's episode when we see her, parked at the end of the town, sort of just spazzing out. But yeah, I think Pietro has, obviously much more free will, I think, even than Wanda expected, because we have shock every time he breaks that character, which brings us to, I think, a perfect transition into talking about Wanda.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a perfect chance to talk about Wanda. And for me, some of the biggest information we get here and what could possibly be the reveal of what has started this. I mean, I think we've always had this idea, but I mean, when she's talking to her brother, Wanda brings up that he knows, he's like, how did you do all of this? Mm-hmm. How'd you get all these kids here? And he talks about it ethically, like you were saying. And he's asking her basically, what is all of this and how did it start? And she says, I can't remember. So even she can't remember. Right. She says, all I know is I felt alone and sad and nothingness.
Right, which, I think we were talking last week about how our thoughts were that, maybe there was an outside entity helping or controlling, but I don't know that I feel that way anymore. I feel like it's just Wanda showing her powers at full force that relate to her emotions. And we see that again when she sees Vision in pain being torn apart at, the wall, at the wall of the Hex. And what happens is, we recall, she loses everything in her eyes. Her eyes go bright red, and that's when we see the Hex continue to expand. I think a lot of it has to do with going back to Pietro, too, and her confusion about Pietro, and her, in Pietro's word, her calling out to him. Yeah. I don't think that Wanda truly called out to him, but Wanda felt like she missed her brother, and then later on, her brother appears. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that she has the control here of her powers, but I do think it is 100% her. She's just out of control with her emotions.
I'm starting to, agree with more of that statement now too. I mean, I really kind of want there to be a bigger power.
Of course, I'm on the same boat, yeah.
But I think that they're just going to go for it and just have it so that Wanda's the one controlling everything. Yeah. So I'm really glad about that. That they're going to go all the way with it. Wanda's in the comics, I just wanted to bring this up. This is kind of my final prediction, and then you can give your predictions for where the show's going to go. My prediction is that in the comics we have the House of M, which is basically like this event that happens that Wanda eradicates all the mutants in the Marvel universe. Mm-hmm. So I think what's happening here is, now that we have Pietro, I think this is, like I've said in previous episodes, we're going to get the mutant universe from the X-Men and MCU colliding together. Yeah. I think that instead of Wanda eradicating all the mutants like she did in the comics, it's going to be that this is the catalyst for mutants to start appearing within the MCU.
And I think that's a brilliant point. I didn't know that, of course, but I'm just going to jump on and say I agree with you completely, because we talked about it. One of the brief important parts of the sword scene were Monica Rambeau, and where she goes, I've come, you've crossed through that wall twice, they tell her now. And look at how, he's seen your blood work. Look at how it's literally re-engineered your cells. So you're absolutely right. I think that's a brilliant point. I didn't think about that, but especially now seeing, we don't know how far Wanda has expanded the Hex, but we're seeing people being taken in more and more. Yeah, Darcy. In fact, I believe everyone at the end of that scene, even the director, he's trying to drive away, but he's the last one out, and we see the Hex hot on his tail. So I couldn't agree more with you, and I think that's a brilliant point. Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see where they're going to go next week. As far as sitcoms left to do, I don't know. Are they going to do the 2000s? Are they going to do Sweet Life of Zach and Cody? I don't know, man.
We'll see. We've got 3 more episodes, and we've got a much more expanded Hex now, so we'll really see where they go. Of course, we saw everything being turned into a carnival sequence, going to commercial or going to the credits in this scene, so we'll see where they go with that. Not a big fan of clowns, so we'll see how that goes. There are a lot of clowns in that.
I don't know what the heck. Maybe it'll change by next week. We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. But definitely, we like this episode. Definitely above a good score from both of us. 7.5 for me, 8.5 for Dom. One last thing we got to talk about before we go: the commercial this week. Survival yogurt or something like that.
No, it was Yo Magic.
Yo Magic, the yogurt for survivors.
Yes.
What
it means, I have no idea.
Yeah, me neither. There weren't many Easter eggs in this one. Definitely just paying homage to 90s and early 2000s, that claymation, computer generation style.
I like
commercial.
that is how I feel. I like the style. The content of this one didn't seem to have much.
We'll see where they go with the commercials. I don't know if they're going to tie them all in or if they're just there to pay homage, of course, as we're doing, to the sitcoms, also to the commercials in those sitcoms.
Right.
But we'll see where they go with it. But yeah, it was well made this week, definitely.
Yeah, totally. So with that said, you can follow me at Dom Gonzalez 48 on Instagram and Twitter. Send me a message there. Give me a follow. RB, where can they find you?
Find me on Instagram at RB_the_SID or on Twitter at RB with the call.
Excellent. And we'll see you guys next week with another WandaVision review and hopefully a few more movie reviews coming for you guys in the next following weeks. So look forward to that as well. Anything else you need to say, Ryan?
No, thanks everyone for watching another episode of Top of the List. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review if you're listening on Apple or Google Podcasts. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good week.